super, super excited. One of my motion graphics heroes, probably the single person that I credit the most with my journey into motion graphics, is John Dickinson. I'm so psyched that you agreed to do this and come on the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, I'm glad to be here.
When did you start MotionWorks?
MotionWorks was probably, you're testing me now, probably about 12 years ago, maybe even 15 years ago.
Okay, that sounds about
maybe
right.
even more, yeah.
That sounds about right. I was just thinking about it today. I think my first full-time job doing motion graphics, just motion graphics, was I think in about 2010-ish, 2010. So prior to that, I had been watching, I've been watching the content on your website, but also too, one of the great series for me was your Making It Look Great series, which I own every version that you made with that. And so I think one of the things, you, Andrew Kramer, Harry Frank, those are probably the three big ones that I started watching, to learn how to do some of the things in After Effects.
Sure.
I had used After Effects in 95-ish, 95, I think 94, 95. But, I shouldn't say I used it. I didn't use it, but I had, I worked at a studio that did have it. And I think at that time, I don't even remember what version it was, but I think at that time you could only do text animations and stuff like that. But it wasn't until I really kind of found you and found Harry and found Andrew Kramer that I really kind of started to really learn how to use After Effects and really start to do that stuff. But I think the thing that endeared me most to you was you were working at Foxtel at the time. So a lot of your training was based on the work that you were doing there. So was Foxtel, your job at Foxtel, was that basically like an on-air promotions department? Is that where you were at in that, or?
Yeah, it was. It's a funny story actually. When I got the job at Foxtel, I didn't have any experience in that, nothing at all. The only motion graphics experience I had was teaching After Effects at a college where I'd studied desktop publishing. Okay. And I happened to be using After Effects as well, and I took some of my work to show the owner of the college, and he said, "Oh, this is looking pretty good. Could you teach it?" and I was working there for a while, and then that went bust during the .com bubble. Right. When the .com bubble burst, and the whole college just went under, literally overnight. So I had to sort of think about where I was going. So I put together a few things, After Effects, and just cobbled together a show reel, and just went out and showed it to different people, and that's how I got the job at Foxtel. But I remember thinking that was a great interview, and I think I'll probably get that job, and having no idea how to be a senior designer, which is what I was hired as. Oh wow! On the very first day, I was a senior designer.
You were hired as a senior designer, not even a junior designer.
So I had all the background After Effects skills. Enough to show that I could do stuff, but no idea how to take a brief or how to create frames, or anything like that. So I was learning on the job.
Oh my gosh. That sounds, it does kind of sound a little bit similar, at least in terms of to the first job that I had doing motion graphics, because it was a similar thing. They, when they hired me, I think they hired me because I knew Cinema 4D well. And I even told them in the interview, I only know how to extrude text and do logos. I don't really know how to I don't know how to model. I don't know how to do any of that stuff. And they were like, oh yeah, sure, fine. But they hired me, and they paid me to learn cinema. It was amazing. I did, it's the first time I ever did modeling and everything like that. But that's amazing for me to hear that, because I I was under the impression that you actually had a pretty, like you went to, so you didn't go to school for design or any of that stuff?
Nothing.
Wow.
No.
Wow.
I remember thinking after I got the job, I was thinking every day I was telling myself, act as if you can do this. And then every time I did a job, a project that was, at Foxtel.
Right.
It would be one little sort of leg under the table of references that, yes, I can do this.
Right.
And then after 14 years there, it's like,
So
the rest is history. But
so this actually brings up a good thing, because I'm self-taught from watching you and stuff like that. One of the things that I have struggled with since actually even getting hired back in 2010-ish to do motion graphics is I've always felt uncomfortable when somebody asks me for my design opinion, because I don't feel, call it imposter syndrome, call it, whatever you want. I never feel like I don't have a background like Chris Do does, so, when I see, so I never feel like I have the authority, if you will, to give my opinion or to do any of that kind of stuff. How would you, speak to that?
Well, I think I think for a long time I felt the same, but obviously, 15 to 20 years in working in the industry,
right,
you end up learning a fair bit about design.
Yeah.
Just through practice and repetition and osmosis from the people that you're working around.
Right.
I know what I think looks good.
Yes.
I appreciate good design. I get excited when I look at something that I think looks really good.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you know what you think looks good,
right,
and you can appreciate good design, then I think it's okay to have an opinion.
Yes. Yes.
I've never put myself out there as John Dickinson, the designer. Never. It's always been
the same.
It's always from a technical standpoint,
right,
but I've
right,
always, for a long time at least, in my tutorials, considered how I've approached a project,
mm-hmm,
and I explain that.
Right, you do. Yeah,
I think that's one of the differences in my tutorials, maybe from a vast majority of tutorials,
yes,
is that I will explain why I did something,
right,
why I applied this effect, and what I felt it added to
right,
it, rather than this looks cool. Take a look at that. That looks cool. I can't stand those kind of tutorials.
Right. Yes. And like the actually one of your tutorials that pops into my head as you were talking just now is it was Batman. Was it Batman Begins?
Yeah, the Dark Knight.
Dark Knight. Yeah. When you did that breakdown, I was just completely blown away by the process, because like you used a lot of, and of course as I bring this up, it escapes me what I don't know if it was the shatter effect. There was something that you did, maybe it was Colorama.
It was shatter. Yeah.
But
it was using Brian Maffitt's legendary shatter effect.
Yes, but you used it in a way that nobody would have ever guessed that it was a shatter effect. It was just, it blew me away. Now, how long did you work at Foxtel?
14 years.
14 years. And in that time, would you say, because you say that you appreciate good design, you had a lot of the elements given to you in some cases, correct? In most cases?
Well, yeah, 100% of the time we'd be working with a promo producer.
Right.
And they would, not 100% of the time, because there's other elements that we would create.
Yes.
But we'd be creating promos. So the promo producer would give us the cut, the edit, and then we would create the graphics for that.
And now, would you get key art supplied to you by the studio or whatever?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we get key art. Sometimes we'd have key art. Sometimes we'd have no key art.
Right.
Sometimes we get inspiration from whatever was done in the trailer.
Right.
It really depends. But it was a fun thing to be able to create tutorials for, because there was always interesting topics, sci-fi movies and dramas and thrillers, and it was great.
I think there was a James Bond one too that you did that I'm thinking of right now. I think.
Yeah, the James Bond one was good. That was one of the the only one I ever got a gold Promax for.
Oh, nice.
There was a lot of rotoscoping in that one, and that one came out really well.
I remember that. I remember that.
Yeah.
Too bad you didn't have Rotobrush 2. So.
No, that looks pretty good actually.
When I saw that announcement, I was like, wow. Now, I mean, the few times that I've used Rotobrush, it was always a really, really bad experience. Thank God for Mocha, but
well, Mocha Pro, I was going to say that.
Yes.
I think if you're really serious about rotoscoping and you want to do it really properly,
right?
That's one of the tools you need.
So, what was your first job?
First job, ever?
Would you answer that however you want to? Your first job ever? Because you came to Foxtel after you were teaching in a university.
Well, here we go. First job ever was at McDonald's. I mean, like a lot of people.
Yeah.
Turned 15. Yeah. Worked at McDonald's. Dropped out of high school in the penultimate year, the year before what we have here. Year 12 is the high school certificate.
Okay.
I dropped out of high school in year 11.
Okay.
Now, remember, we're talking very early 80s here.
Right.
Heavily into music and no idea what I was doing.
Right.
So I decided to do a trade. And the first thought was, okay, well, I liked art at school, so I'll become a sign writer. And this is the manual writing of signs on Windows.
I like that.
You still see a little bit of that around, but it's not very common. But I went for the aptitude test, and there was like 30 all guys there, and I couldn't even finish it in the time that I was allocated. So bombed out of that. So I thought, okay, what's the next thing I can do that's creative? So I thought, okay, ladies hairdressing, and and then this is the 80s, right?
My gosh!
You remember the hair in the 80s?
You're John Peters.
That's right. So I took a 4-year ladies hairdressing apprenticeship, and hated
4 years.
Hated every minute of it. 4 years, hated it, but didn't finish high school, so decided to finish that apprenticeship.
Right.
So that was my second job. So it was McDonald's, hairdresser, and then jumped to living in Japan, being an English teacher, and then coming back to Australia and just working with my brother in his training company. He did a lot of teaching of sales reps.
Okay.
This is in the very early 90s.
Okay.
And I was helping him, and that's when I got into learning how to use a Mac, Microsoft Word, Adobe Illustrator, Quark Express, and that was the era of the multimedia, so it was Avid Express and very expensive tools.
Right.
After Effects,
right.
Photoshop, and that led into the job at the Computer Graphics College, which led into the job at Foxtel.
Nice.
So, not a lot of jobs in my life, I guess. Not a lot of different jobs.
Well, I mean, it sounds like the longest job that you had was working at Foxtel, correct?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
by far.
And now I know too from watching a lot of your videos and stuff like that. You reference and you credit Brian Moffat a lot.
Of course.
Was there? Have the two of you have never worked together on anything, have you?
No, unfortunately. But Brian's still a legend.
Yes. Absolutely.
I mean, many of us around that time when I got into this were influenced by people like Brian Moffat and Trish and Chris Meyer. Right. I remember reading Chris and Trish Meyer's DV magazine.
Yeah, I think I said
After Effects. I used to cut those out religiously. I've still got it here. Look at this. This is my original After Effects folder.
That's so awesome.
So I would religiously cut things out, and I would paste them in.
I love that.
And I've even highlighted sections.
Yes.
So I mean that's how serious I was back in the day, and I've still got these things.
That is so awesome.
The picture of Trish she's so young there. Wow.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, and then of course Brian. This was before the web, and Brian had released.
Was it Total Training?
Had Total Training, and had released all of these giant sets of VHS videos. And I remember buying that set at least 3 times, 3 different versions, and watching it, sitting in front of my TV and just watching from beginning to end.
I had a friend when I started this process, I think it was probably about 2005, 2006, the process of learning After Effects and design and stuff like that. I had a friend who worked at a company, and they bought the Total Training series, and he swore by it. I mean, everything that he was doing, he had learned from Total Training and stuff like that, the company that he worked for was very, very strict about lending stuff like that out. So he, every now and then, he would like slide a DVD, under the rug, to let me watch and whatnot. But I never got to really watch a lot of that training. But I know that it was really, really popular at the time.
Popular because it was great content, and there wasn't much of that kind of training around.
Yes.
And as I said, there was no web to speak of.
Right.
But also, Brian has such a great presentation style. Well, I mean, most of the stuff you watch is 15 minutes, and you're half asleep. But Brian's a trained actor, so he made it really fun and accessible, and you really felt like you were being trained by a mentor.
Right.
When you watch Brian's stuff.
Well, I think the thing that I appreciated about the Total Training series, at least from the limited amount of discs that I watched, was they were practical examples. They were, there wasn't really much theory as much as there was, here's a project, we're going to do this project and we're going to tackle it. So, and that's the thing that I've always appreciated, and that's one of the things that I loved about your stuff early on, is you were showing practical examples of things that you did for Foxtel and various different things, and you translated that into the Making It Look Great series, which is also what I appreciated as well too, because there's a goal. Here's what we're going to create. Let's move forward with that, and I've always appreciated that style more than the theoretical aspect of things.
Definitely.
And so now, where was it? Oh, where did it go?
Well, let me just add to that, actually.
Yes.
So Making It Look Great literally came out of a very, very early live webinar that Zach Stow and I did for...
Oh my gosh, Zach Stow.
Right. So Making It Look Great 1 was based on a project I did at Foxtel, and I said, "Hey Zach, got this cool look. Why don't we set up some kind of webinar? We'll get some people in," and we ended up getting 50 people watching. And this is very long time ago, right?
I may have watched it.
Yeah, and it was live, right? It was live. We had 50 people watching, and Zach's jumped in at the very end. I ended up talking for like 3 hours. I remember it was really quite long. And then Zach's joined the call at the end, and we were answering questions, and it was very successful. People paid to watch it,
right?
And so I decided to record it as a training series, and then I was talking with my brother about this is a sales trainer, and very good with words. Right. And I thought, what am I going to call it? I'm basically showing people how to make things look great. So he said, "Why don't you call it Making Look Great?"
It. Yep.
Much better than my idea about making it look fantastic. Because Milg has a better sound to it, right?
It does actually, and it's funny too, because I remember when the abbreviation came about. I was kind of like, oh yeah, actually. And so from then on, I never referenced it as Making It Look Great. I always referenced it as Milg 1, Milg 2, Milg 3.
And we got up to Milg 11, right?
Yes,
with Toby
correct.
Pittman, and Milg 11 it still sells. It's Milg 11 Cinema 4D modeling.
Right.
It's still so relevant, even though we created it in 2016. It's still super relevant.
Well, and Toby is an encyclopedia of
a great teaching style too.
What's funny is that I remember, like, I'm going to be honest, I still haven't watched it all the way through. But I remember the first, even just some of the first handful of lessons of him talking about, edge flow and very just even some of the things that he talked about in those handful of lessons made me think about modeling completely in a different way. And
yeah, me too. I mean, I'd basically, it was all very selfish. I'd basically watched everything I could on YouTube, and I knew Toby from Twitter. He'd helped me out on a couple of things.
Yeah.
And I knew that he was very good at it. I said, look, I can't find anything on YouTube anymore. I started watching Maya and 3D Studio Max tutorials.
Yeah.
And eventually managed to convince Tobe to record some training. And he just really went for it. And it took a long time to develop because Toby would record something and then think, there's a better way to do that. And he'd re-record it and restructure the lessons. And it ended up being like 24 hours. I mean, with some full, start to end modeling in there.
Yeah.
But there's so much in there.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, it is the encyclopedia on how to model in Cinema 4D. I mean, it really, truly is. And now, when because you made 11 different MILGs, so I mean, and you had 11 different trainers. Or wait,
no, not 11 different trainers. Rob Redman played a big part, and also Tim Clapham.
Yes,
Tim Clapham from Hello Lux recorded 6 and 7.
He did 2. That's right. You're right.
Yeah, I did number 1.
Yes.
And
I know Harry Frank was in there on one of them.
Yeah, that's right. Harry Frank and Rob Redman did. Number 5 was done by Moltanen, if you remember. Jerzy Drosta
That's
Jr.
right. Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes.
Number 5.
Yeah.
And number 6 and 7 by Tim Clapham. This is before Hello Lux days.
Right.
And 8, 9, and 10 were Rob Redman. And 11 was Toby.
He did. Oh wow! I didn't realize he did 3 of them.
He did. Yeah.
Oh wow!
Very successful.
Yeah.
And actually, 8, 9, and 10 are now available on my YouTube channel.
Right.
So anyone can watch those now.
Yes, which everyone should watch those because Rob's training was very, and that again, like I said, I think that's what I like about the whole series is you're taking a practical example and you're teaching how to, the whole robot thing was just really great to go from the beginning, from modeling that to animating that and to the final render process. It was really, really good training. And I'm glad that it's available now for people to be able to watch and to be able to see, because I think it's very, very, very good content for people who are especially are getting into Cinema 4D to go watch. So I'll put a link of your YouTube channel in the description below.
Yep.
Now you've kind of, obviously you switched gears a bit. Your job at Foxtel ended. They were downsizing.
Foxtel is, if people don't know, is Australia's cable,
right?
Pay TV network,
like HBO,
really, super successful for a number of years. But when Netflix came, everything changed, and Foxtel had been playing catch up for quite a while with Netflix and all of the other contenders that have thrown their hat in the ring since then. And they've literally been, since that time, downsizing, getting a little smaller and smaller, as companies have to do to stay competitive.
Right.
Still remains to be seen where Foxtel ends up.
Yes.
I was one of the first groups of people who were made redundant.
Yeah.
Because actually, and at the time, I'd been there 14 years, and I wasn't particularly happy. I was doing the same old stuff all the time.
Yeah.
It was a comfortable job, but I wasn't really stretching myself.
Yes.
So the timing was pretty good, and that was 4 years ago.
Right. Which, oh my gosh, where's the time gone? Because I know you were freelancing since then, and then even more recently, you've decided to kind of switch gears from motion graphics, if you will, and kind of focus on modeling.
Well, yeah, I've been teaching myself how to model for years.
Right.
Because it was something I always really wanted to focus on.
Yeah.
Something about creating things in 3D just really excited me. So I'm still very heavily into that. And I developed a new website, developed a new portfolio, started developing a new client list, was moving in that direction. And I still do that in my spare time. But in the last 6 months, 6 months ago, I was approached by Boris Effects to head up the motion graphics area of Boris Effects, and I jumped at that chance. So I'm full time. I'm full time with Boris Effects now.
Yeah, I'm glad you did, and I think it's a really, just my personal opinion, which nobody really cares about, but I think it's a perfect fit for the both of you, because I think you bring to the table something that they can benefit from greatly, and even in just the content that I've seen that you've created, like. I remember when I saw your one of your recent tutorials, the particle illusion kind of cocaine.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it wasn't supposed to be cocaine, but it had a when I was building that, I was thinking Johnny Depp and blow. That's all I could think of in my head. But I never referenced drugs once in that.
No, you didn't.
I said dust or powder.
Yeah. And it's funny too, because at first I was like, I didn't know particle illusion could do that, but even on top of that, just the conceptualization of that particular project, I thought was just absolutely amazing, and I think that's one of the things that I appreciate about you is that you have a you look at, well, I mean, like a lot of different creative people, and I think that's something that's good about creativity in general is creative people just look at the world differently, and you have a unique perspective that I really, really enjoy, and I'm gonna try and clamp down on my fanboy, my John Dickinson fanboy tendencies. I kind of, if you don't mind, I kind of want to talk a little bit more about Foxtel, and not. Mostly because what I want to talk about is I want to talk about on-air promotions, and working in an environment like that. I mean, I've done some on-air promotions work, and so I'm familiar with it. But, can you kind of explain kind of how on-air promotions works? Because people who are watching that, I want people to be inspired as they're trying to. Get into the industry or get into the business and whatnot. What is an on-air promotions department? What do they do?
I think I've had experience at Foxtel, and since Foxtel, I've had experience at a number of different TV networks in their freelance department, and they do generally work the same way. So you've got your promo producers, or they call them creatives. Right. In some places.
Yes.
You've got your graphics department, and you've got your audio department, and generally you'll get the promo producer who would talk to the creative director and decide on the approach, and they'll do the edit, and if you're lucky, the promo producer will include you, right, the designer, on the process earlier, especially if it involves more effects. Sometimes you'll get a promo where the edit will just be very simple. You just have to put a couple of full frame supers, cut in between, and then you'll put an end frame, and the end frame will, or pack shot will be based on whatever that particular channel's look is. Right. Often a donut where the graphics have already been created, and you're just going to put in your details. Yes. Cut out your key art, just drop it in. But then there's other promos that are much longer. There can be things like like a 60-second or 90-second spot, which has got multiple graphics, but also visual effects shots, rotoscoping, motion tracking, stabilization, all that kind of stuff. So if you're lucky, they'll include you early on those discussions, so that you can give a designer's perspective, right? And I mean, most designers have some visual effects experience, so visual effects artist perspective, which will save problems later. Yes. So they won't give you a bunch of shots that you can't work with. They'll give you shots that you've discussed together that will work with what they want, and so you'll get the edit, and sometimes that will be the final, high res edit, right? And then you'll just add in your graphics, and then you'll render that out, and that'll go on air. Other times it'll be, like in Channel 9, they have a flame for finishing, so it'll be like a pre-flame version, and then you'll do all your edits, and then that version will go to the Flame for grading, color grading, and then that version will be spit out. And one of the things that confused me when I very first started working for television was that I always felt that it was good to have the audio and decided on the audio up front, because the audio often drives the graphics.
It does, yes.
And I mean, it does as far as style goes,
right?
But also technically, you can use the audio to create keyframes and literally use it as part of your technical workflow,
right?
And which can tie the audio to the visuals really closely,
right?
But when I got to Foxtel, it was like, oh no, we don't do the audio. That's done at the end. So you'd have to imagine what the music was going to be like. You'd have to create all your graphics.
Oh wow!
In silence, right?
So would you even get dialogue?
Well, you'd get dialogue.
Okay.
But especially in like a film,
right?
A promo for a film. There's always music. There's always. It's nice to have that to be able to drive the graphics as well.
Yes.
And also to get the the rhythm and the pace of the edit. But that was all done later.
Right.
Sometimes though, if on some projects I've had it where they would put some audio in, there'd be like a rough cut, and you could use that as a base.
Yes.
And then they'd do a final cut at the end of the audio.
Right.
But so that's basically it. So it's edit, graphics, audio, output.
Yes. Nice.
And it was pretty much the same way every time.
I know in my experience, I worked for a company doing a lot of Disney Channel promos, and the editor who was he was basically the number 2 guy at the company. So, but he was also he was the lead editor, and he was probably what most people would consider a predator, which I've never liked that term. I hate that term, which is producer editor. But he would not only be the producer on that particular promo, but he would be the editor, and he was very in tune with music, and so he did he was very musical with his edits. So we always got a rough kind of audio mix, and then once it was finished, they would then send that off to the audio engineer to master. But I've never worked in a situation where I've not had audio, like you said, informing the graphics and various different things. Like even as recently as last year, I did some Terminator promos as well too. All of the editors would provide us with a rough cut with they did all the sound effects, and they did all of that stuff. And so a lot of that stuff was included in a lot of the stuff that we worked on, that we would then pass back to them, and they would then send off to get finalized and finished. But I've never had to work in a situation like that. That's got to be really rough.
Because they would do the sound effects based on our graphics as well. So
oh wow,
you do your whooshes and your hits and stuff like that, and that would all be put in afterwards.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
And I have to say, pretty seamlessly, the editors, the audio editors knew exactly what they were doing.
Yeah.
It was like it was made for the graphics.
Yes. Yeah. Now, at Foxtel, because you said Foxtel is probably the American equivalent to like an HBO or a Showtime or something like that.
Yeah.
You were working, because it's like a cable channel. You're cutting promos for all kinds of different studios. Did you have to do style guides? I mean, did you have to follow style guides for each studio? Because every studio has, their certain, look and whatnot.
No, not necessarily in the department I was in the on-demand department.
Okay.
So subscribers would pay an extra fee to watch videos on demand.
Right.
Movies on demand.
Okay.
Which sounds really retro now when you can pay $14 a month and just...
I know.
Doesn't it? It's crazy.
Very, very.
So
did you like when I was working on the Disney Channel stuff, Disney provided us with a lot of the tags and the pack shots and all, they because they had another company that would create these graphics packages for them, and then they would send it to us to be able to incorporate into and we were working on
that happened.
So okay,
same thing. Now, we'd often get the US packages.
Gotcha. Okay.
We just have to rework it,
right,
to work the local market. But as far as things like key art and layout, some of the studios were just totally cool with what we did.
Yeah.
But certain studios, we'd have to send the finished over to the US for approval.
Right.
Which is, and that wouldn't be done until the very end, and sometimes you'd have to go back to the drawing board.
Oh, yeah.
I think one of the most frustrating things about working in a big department like that is the approval process.
Yeah.
You always felt that there could be a better way to do that, because you'd find yourself redoing stuff unnecessarily because someone hadn't showed somebody else.
Correct. Yes. I've never enjoyed the process of exactly as you just said, going down that path and getting to the end only to, like you had just said, that could have, that change could have been headed off at the pass. We could have not even done that. Had somebody, had you shown the style frames to somebody.
I think that'll be an age-old problem, and I don't know whether there'll ever be a solution for that.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, some of that is, at least in my experience in working in the studio system, I mean, listen, everybody wants to do their best. Everybody really, they want to, for the most part, marketing executives, they want to move up. They want to have a career in marketing. They want to move up that level, that ladder in the studio system, and they want to do that. So everybody's trying really hard to do their best, but sometimes the communication just falls apart, and it's a little sad, and I hate it. I've been thrown under the bus a number of times in terms of situations like that, where it's like, I'll get blamed for something that, I had no control over in the first place. And I've, I'm better about standing up for myself in those types of situations, and even not even being put into a situation like that to begin with. But, I don't know anybody who hasn't suffered that same fate, at some point in their career.
I think also that some people in those creative, director roles, some people are better at communicating what they want than others.
Correct.
Just because you're a creative director doesn't mean you're a great communicator.
You hit the nail on the head right there. I think that is amazing. That is amazingly well said right there. And there are so many people, and because I've come across so many different people who are very talented and very creative, who are also horrendous communicators. But then I've also worked with a lot of lazy producers as well too. I worked a job, many years ago, where we had the producer that I was working with, and she would notoriously wait until 5 o'clock at the end of the day and watch the cut of the whatever we were working on and give notes, and then say, all right, all this stuff needs to be addressed by 10 a.m. tomorrow so the client can review it. And it's like, it's 6 o'clock. And we, most of us have all been here since, 8 or 9 o'clock. So, and it's funny too, because, her bosses never said anything until they started to see the overtime.
Yeah, sure. And I can't say I missed that.
Yeah.
I hated that kind of thing.
I will say that I only encountered that one other time. But outside of that, I mean, most people, especially in my most recent incarnation working in the studio, it was as corporate as you can get. And, people are like, I can wait till tomorrow. I mean, it was I was actually a little surprised how lackadaisical they were in terms of getting the work done. I'm kind of like, I don't mind staying an extra. Nah, don't worry about it. If you can get to it tomorrow by end of day, that's fine. I'm like, I'll have it finished before lunch. But so that's been, that's been my general experience in terms of working at an actual studio versus working at a production company. Production companies are a little bit, more on top of the timelines of various different things and wanting to get things done. But the other part of it too is, you hit the nail on the head as well. It's something you said earlier is that, there are some studios that need that approval process, and at least in terms of working on Disney Channel stuff, they absolutely had to approve every little detail. And I would always be shocked when I would get notes back. Yeah, the kerning on this needs to be fixed, and it's like, wow. I appreciated that attention to detail, but at the same time too, the amount of time that they would spend sometimes going through the cut of the promo just to find that one little thing that was wrong, so that they would have some kind of justification for not making a payment on something or whatever it was. It was a little mind-boggling.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't imagine that you would have to deal with that at Foxtel. So you're doing motion graphics for Boris effects. What is your role there? Explain to me what that is. What is your goal with a lot of the things that you're trying to tackle there?
Well, my official role is director of motion graphics. So, that's a perfect role for me because, I'm a seasoned designer, motion graphics artist,
right,
and trainer,
right,
and yes. They're all the things that I bring to the
yes.
role. Obviously, Boris FX has some powerful tools:
oh, yeah.
Continuum, Sapphire,
yeah.
Mocha, and there's a lot of effects in there. So I basically get to create great graphics and using those tools.
Right.
And this literally do what I've always done is break down how I created it. I've just actually finished a new spot, literally just yesterday, that I'll be doing a live webinar for next week on creating like a modern glitchy effect using Sapphire and After Effects.
You shouldn't have told me about glitches.
And literally it's the perfect example of what I do at Boris FX. So exploring the tools, understanding how to use the tools, and making it simple and easy to understand how Boris FX tools can be used in conjunction with other hosts, in this case After Effects tools, to create something that looks really good. So that's my role. And that also moves into creating presets. Mm-hmm. I want to, with my role at Boris FX, help people see that the tools are there. With those tools, you can make things look really, really good.
Yeah.
And just take the level of graphics that are coming out of Boris FX up a level.
Right.
Hopefully, I'm always trying to push it harder and harder, and also show how to use them, how easy they are to use.
Right.
So it's a perfect role for me. It's a perfect fit.
Well, I think that when you joined, I was just like, oh man, Ben Brownlee just got a really good cohort and a really good partner in crime to kind of because the two of you just upped the level of training and content that Boris is doing, and
I agree, and that's why I think Ben and I have had that discussion.
Yeah.
I've been using Boris's tools for a long time.
Yeah,
I used Sapphire when it was with GenArts.
Yeah.
I always felt that Boris FX I could add something to
right.
it to bring the graphics up to.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I'm the only one, because there's other great people at Boris FX.
Yeah.
But I know that I can put my spin on it, give my touch to the tools. They're great tools. Sometimes maybe they haven't been as showcased as well as I felt they probably could be. So I'm always really deep involved in giving my ideas and my thoughts on how to make things look better.
Yeah.
And they are very, very good tools, and I just think that I'm lucky to be able to play around with them.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny too, because I have become so dependent on them that and it's funny too, because I have this conversation a lot with people when people ask me, well, why doesn't After Effects do this or do that or whatever it is? And well, the answer is yes. To a certain extent, it can do almost anything that that a third-party plugin can do. The difference is that the third-party plugin, well, sometimes a third-party plugin can do something that After Effects can't do, but it's a time-saving issue. And I mean, if I've got one plugin that can save me an hour's worth of time of trying to figure out how to do it natively inside of After Effects, that's an hour that I've saved. And you compound that on top of each other, through the course of a particular work week, and in a lot of instances, it's paid for itself just in a week or two of work. And
definitely, I agree with that to a point. I mean, this is really fresh in my mind because I've been working on it for the last week.
Right.
A tool like, for example, in Sapphire, Parallax Strips.
Yes.
Parallax Strips basically you apply it to one layer, and it will break that layer up into different strips distributed in Z and offset. To do that manually in After Effects requires you to duplicate the layer multiple times, correct, to mask it out. There's no random seed.
Right.
That kind of tool allows you to create something that's really, really impressive.
Yes.
Especially when combined with other effects.
Agreed.
At the click of a finger. So, I mean, there are things like glows and blurs, and of course, there's comparable effects in After Effects.
I like using Parallax Strips sometimes as just a black and white matte.
Well, I actually show how I use that in this particular breakdown to break up. As a matte to break up the text, which is applied on top. Yeah. So there are After Effects effects that I will use instead of third-party effects as well.
Yeah.
You got to use the right tool for the job, right?
You do.
But if you believe that only default effects are going to get you through everything, then you are limiting yourself.
You are. I think Peter McCauley said to me, it's like what did he say? It's like telling Rembrandt that he could only use one type of brush, or one type of paint or whatever it was. And it was funny because when he said that, I was kind of like, oh, I never actually even thought about it that way. But yeah, I mean, you're limiting yourself unnecessarily in some instances. And I know I have probably two of the most used plugins that I use in Sapphire that I've used almost on every project are the Sapphire's Drop Shadow and Sapphire's Gradients. The Drop Shadow and the Gradients, I just, because I have so many more options available to me than just the stock Drop Shadow and stock, ramp effect in After Effects, that when I find myself, if ever I've been in a place where they don't have Sapphire and they are not going to get Sapphire, I always find myself being kind of like, I feel a little dumb sometimes because I'm kind of like, okay, how does this effect work sometimes? I mean, they're not hard to figure out. They're very primitive plugins inside of After Effects, but some of the things that I utilize Drop Shadow for, I feel like the quality of the Drop Shadow is even just that much better with S Drop Shadow than I do with just the Drop Shadow in After Effects. But
yeah, for sure.
So you got rid of MotionWorks. So MotionWorks is.
Well, I didn't get rid of MotionWorks. I retired MotionWorks.
Okay, sorry.
And that was something I was leading up to for a while. I mean, to run a website and a shop and keep it up to date, and it was very I wouldn't say life-changingly lucrative for me,
right?
But it definitely was a good sort of side thing for me to do, especially when I was at Foxtel, because I could do that on the side. It would be a little bit of extra income, but I had long discussions about what I was going to do with it, and umming and ahhing about should I go the whole hog and really focus on it and get lots and lots of products in there, but does that mean developing my own products and all that entails, or should I put other people's products? If I put other people's products, then that requires more financial things that I have to do, and there's other places that do it much better than I would ever do it. So in the end, I thought, well, I'll just quietly retire MotionWorks, because I was focusing on moving myself more to having my own sort of 3D asset creation, product visualization area, and that's why I decided to create a separate website anyway.
Yes.
And once I'd created that website, MotionWorks was kind of, well, what am I going to put on there?
Right.
There's a lot of old content. There was.
Yeah.
A lot of old content on there. And surprisingly, when I did retire it, I mean, I only had, I had a lot of really nice feedback about people saying that, I learned how to do this, to do what I do.
Yeah.
Which was really nice.
Yeah.
It was humbling. But as far as products and stuff, I mean, I've only had probably 20 or 25 people contact me since I closed it months and months ago saying, my machine died, I need to re-download it. I've got all that sorted out. But I wasn't overwhelmed with an avalanche of people. Right. So it was time for MotionWorks just to quietly just sort of step aside.
Yeah. I know one of the first things that I did when I got Dropbox was I started storing a lot of my training content up in Dropbox, because I think I had emailed you once or twice about, hey, I can't even remember which milk it was, but it was. I've been guilty of that for sure. Now, what was there a reason that you decided not to post stuff up on YouTube? YouTube's been around
originally.
Well, I mean, YouTube's been around since 2005.
I know. At first, I used Vimeo because everyone was using Vimeo.
Yes.
I mean, about 10 years ago, Vimeo was the motion graphics kind of platform.
Yes.
And they seemed to have the features that I needed. I always was a bit concerned that the videos didn't load particularly well.
Yeah.
And they still don't in some cases.
Yeah.
I only just recently turned off my Vimeo. I unsubscribed,
right.
And I knew. I mean, what a hassle! I had 500 videos on there, and I would have to download them all one by one if I wanted to get that. What a hassle, right? So I ended up just downloading just the key tutorials that I thought still had some legs. Some of them were quite old.
Right.
I look back at them and think, geez.
Right.
4x3 and motionworks.com.au.
Yes.
Just all the links are wrong, but the content was still quite good. So I downloaded all of those.
Okay.
Literally probably 2 dozen, and I literally just let my account. I closed my account and just let it. I got the warning message: you're going to lose all your content. But then, it was turned off, and that's all gone.
Wow.
So I started uploading to YouTube.
Right.
And now I'm focusing a little bit more on getting regular content on YouTube. And, I hit the monetization threshold.
You hit it pretty quickly, didn't you?
I think I've made about $25 so far this month. So
well, I haven't hit monetization yet, but I'm trying to get there. But yeah, no, I don't ever. I even told my wife, it's like, even getting to the ability to monetize, I'm not going to see a huge shift in income. But it does.
Well, you've got to get the content on there, right? You just got to get.
You do.
You've got to get lots and lots of content.
You do. And
it also beefs up my YouTube channel as well. I mean, there's no sense just taking everything down and just leaving it if it's still useful.
Right. Yeah. But I do know that you have there's some really, really good quality content up on YouTube, so it definitely ups the game, I think, for a lot of creators in that regard. And then you have people like Daniel Hashimoto, Action Movie Dad, who is doing a lot of really cool, really great stuff, but posting on Twitter, but also with the Action Movie Kid stuff that he does on YouTube. I mean, there's some really, really great visual effects stuff that people are doing. But who are some of your inspirations?
Gee, that's a good question. Let me just think about that for a moment. Well, it depends on in what area.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know whether I've ever had a list of say 5 people that I find really inspiring.
Right.
There's so much content all the time.
Right.
Sometimes you feel sort of overloaded with content. I mentioned before about as a designer just knowing what you like. I don't think I've sort of. I mean, actually, the other day, I blanket unfollowed everyone on Twitter, not only because I was getting so much content every morning I couldn't keep up with it, and a lot of stuff. There's a lot of politics and stuff in there which I I've had enough of.
Yeah, same.
But I was getting sort of retweeted stuff, and people retweet other people's tweets, and there's a lot of noise.
Yeah.
So I didn't do it any sort of malicious way. I just unfollowed everyone, literally not looking, just unfollow, just to do it one by one. And I'm slowly feeding people back in. Right. Not because of their merits or anything, but mainly because of I want to follow people who are focused. Right. Who post quality work, things that do inspire me. Give me inspiration for this other stuff. And I also need to keep abreast of what's happening. True. Yes. With my role with Boris Effects to see what's happening. So I don't think there's anyone necessarily specific that I would follow that gives me great inspiration. Mm-hmm. I really dig people who are really good at what they do. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter what kind of format that takes. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a piece of music that I watch on YouTube. It's by John Butler. He's an Australian musician. Mm-hmm. And it's a piece of music that he wrote for acoustic guitar. It goes for about 12 minutes, called Ocean. Oh, wow. And Ocean. And he plays it on a 12-string guitar without any mistakes. The acoustic version. Wow. And it gives me goosebumps, right? Just watching that and seeing the skill level and the practice that it must have taken, the years of practice to do something like that. Yeah. And that inspires me. It doesn't have to be about motion graphics, it doesn't have to be about 3D modeling. It's just something, I'm getting goosebumps now. something that takes me to a level, to that kind of level, because that inspires you to be good at what you do. Yeah. And I watch this regularly. I watch the performance by Heart at the Barack Obama's. I'm not sure what you call it in the US, but it's the President Honors. They have it every term.
The Kennedy Center.
The Kennedy Center, right? And the Barack Obama's last one was the last one. It had the existing surviving members of Led Zeppelin there. Yeah. Okay. And Heart came on with a full African American choir and did Stairway to Heaven, and that's on YouTube. Oh, yeah, that blows my mind because of how well that's produced and how the vocals are so good, and it builds up from gentle acoustic and voice through to full choir, and the cutaway to Robert Plant and the other members, and you can see them tearing up. Oh wow! And it's just like, oh yeah, man. So that kind of stuff inspires me. If I find something like that, someone who's really, really good at what they do. I love that. Doesn't have to be anyone in particular.
I love that because when I think that was one of the inspiration and finding people that are inspirational is I mean, it's not only something that I am passionate about. I'm passionate about finding people who are very good at what they do and finding out how they do what they do and what inspires them and what how they find creative inspiration to do the things that they do. And it's one of the reasons why I got into entertainment in the first place, because it was an escape for me. It was a way for me to just be completely transported into a completely different world and not have to think about politics or family or strife or any of those things. It was a way for me to kind of get into a whole new world. Don't mean to do a song there, but so I love hearing that. I love hearing that from other people. Are there specific things that you do whenever you are creatively blocked? I mean, you said you listen to Butler's music constantly. Does that help you kind of break any kind of creative block that you might have?
I mean, I obviously have Spotify, and I've got a couple of Sonos speakers behind me, and just hooked up to be in stereo. And it's funny because at the end of every year, Spotify gives you your top playlist, and for the last couple of years, it's been a lot of really, really ambient music, a lot of piano, I can't remember any particular artists off the top of my head, but a lot of that kind of stuff, because I like to have music in the background, but it needs to be the kind of music where I can concentrate.
Right, exactly.
And that kind of music really works really well. I've got a playlist called Concentration, and I'm just constantly putting songs in there and looping it. So there isn't, I mean, for creative inspiration, one of the best things to do is get away from the computer. I find I get my best ideas when I'm moving. Some people say in the shower.
Yeah.
You know, if I'm on a bus or in the car or just walking. I think, you know, because that when you're away from the computer, it creates that space in your mind.
Yeah.
You know what it's like. I mean, meditation is the idea that when you create the space, then, you know, great things can happen, and I think that's really important.
I think one thing walking does for you too is it gets the blood flowing, and it gets the blood flowing to your brain, and you know, and so it wakes your brain up sometimes to, you know, so that you can kind of think a little bit more clearly. I know one of the things that I don't know if I heard Stephen King say it. I heard some writer say it. It might have been Stephen King, but you know, that he never feels creatively blocked, because he at least in terms of his workflow, I mean, he knows in his mind that he has to write a certain amount of pages every day. He has to write, you know, there's a certain amount of things that you have to write, and sometimes if you don't, you know, sometimes if he doesn't know what he's going to write, he just writes. You know, whether it's describing what's in the room or, you know, whatever it is, and the act of doing that starts to trigger other things and starts to get starts to move the cogs in the brain to, you know, to turn, and sure. I found that to be true with music as well too. You know, sometimes I'll just sit down and just start playing a song that I know. And in playing that song, or, you know, if you will, in communing with that music, I'll do something, or something will happen that triggers, oh, I like what I just played there. I'm going to play with that idea. So sometimes I feel like the act of actually doing it helps to break through that creative block.
Sure, and music definitely helps, and it's interesting you should mention writing as well, because I've been reading a lot more lately, and great writing inspires me as well. Yeah, I mean, I've been wanting to read a few more classics, and I finally read recently To Kill a Mockingbird.
Oh yeah,
I'd never read it. Yeah. And I finally realised that Boo Radley, the character of Boo Radley, comes from To Killing Mockingbird. I never realised that. But just a single sentence by a great writer.
Yes, agreed.
I mean, there's a sentence in To Kill a Mockingbird where he writes about, I think it's probably the fence around Boo Radley's house, and how it's a picket fence, but the pickets are like drunkenly drunk. He describes them as drunkenly in you know, around the house, and you can just imagine that. Yeah. You know, he doesn't say they're slanted. He just uses that word. Yes. And that inspires me. I love really creative use of the English language.
Yes, wholeheartedly agree with you on that one. I love that you just read To Kill a Mockingbird.
Like, inspiration comes in many forms. It does. Right? I agree with you. But it's just like seeing you then. You're inspired by talking about something. So you talking about something that inspires you already changes your physiology. Correct. You know. Agreed. Yeah, I think it's important to look across the full spectrum of things. Yeah. I mean, I like to get into the garden as well. And you know, when I can, and, you know, just grow vegetables. I don't do it particularly well. Yeah. But it's also something different. Just different kinds of things that take you away from. Right. I mean, I sit down most of my life at the moment in front of the computer. Yes, same. So it's important to get away from that.
Well, I'm trying to. Now that my kids are a little bit older, I want to. It was one of the things that I wanted to try and do this summer, is to go out and do some landscape photography, go out and about. We've gone on walks around the neighborhood, and I've taken my camera and we've taken pictures, and it's kind of fun getting them involved in it as well too, because it's like, oh, take a picture of this or take a picture of that, and it's like, it's very kind of fun to expose them to some of those things as well too. So I'm hoping to kind of do more of that as well too. I used to do a lot of photography, but John, I want to thank you so much for coming on and for doing this. Like I said, you're one of my heroes, and I don't think that I would have a motion design career had you not started MotionWorks and done the MILG series and stuff like that. I don't think anybody would have paid me to do any of those things, and I have enjoyed that process a lot, and I thank you very much for that. And I'm hoping at the very least that I can be that inspiration for somebody else who's coming up and who wants to learn about this business. So
fantastic.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'm going to put.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm going to put all of the links in the description below, and I'll also. I think you're going to get a little lower third that tells people where that they can follow you on social media and stuff. So.
Yeah, sure, great, sounds good.
Yeah, thank you again, and thanks guys for coming, and I'll see you in the next episode.